Hello friends, welcome to the FEYGIN World YouTube channel. We appreciate our audience who gathers around their screens to listen to us and stay updated on the latest news about events in Europe, America, and beyond. Thank you all. My name is ALYONA Kurbanova, and today's broadcast we will be hosting with Mark FEYGIN. Hey Mark, how's it going?
Pleased to welcome all the viewers on our YouTube channel. We are excited to have you here.
Friends, at the start, as always, I'm going to urge you to be active. YouTube is greedy, hungry, and really loves support. So don't forget to like, maybe even as a down payment for many, but trust me, we're working on it. Promoting our video is crucial. Don't forget to subscribe. Definitely don't be shy. Now is the ideal time to subscribe to the FEYGIN World YouTube channel. Honestly, Mark, I never imagined that we would have such extensive and serious discussions about Emmanuel Macron, because the president of France has definitely been trending in the past few weeks. He is the talk of the town. He used to be seen as a very indecisive, handsome European president, but today it seems like he is almost the only one who can fight for the title of the bravest, because he was the first to hypothetically suggest that someday in the future, maybe, he could lead troops on the territory of Ukraine. Now, he doesn't retract his words after a few weeks. Also, as the publication's Politics states, he has been postponing his visit to Kiev for a long time because he needed to compare the time, the temperature in the room with his allies, with the Americans, with the Germans, with the Dutch, in general, with all who are currently part of NATO. Well, and in March, we expect this visit soon. So maybe the arrows actually matched somewhere there?
A crucial aspect, in my opinion, is that Macron, the representative of France, along with European allies, got scared when Trump was elected as the US president in November. This event had a significant impact on their perception of global politics and emphasized the uncertainties that arose from Trump's presidency. If he has an opportunity to win, he additionally states that he declines to further carry responsibilities towards European nations if they do not provide payment for their own security measures. And therefore, the main critic of NATO, and Macron is exactly that, stated that we have a certain independent task within the European conflict, the conflict in Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine, which can be resolved through military intervention, as per his perspective and analysis of the situation at hand. Indeed, he is talking about his desire to avoid, just like all the other European leaders, a direct confrontation with Russian troops, and if possible, still manage to prevent any casualties in connection with this situation. However, he does not back down from this intention, and I want to reiterate that this is the first reason why Trump stated in Carolina that European countries must bear the financial responsibility for their own security. The second reason is that France, with the departure of Great Britain from the European Union, is vying for the role of the main country responsible for European security and the protection of the European community. And this is an ambitious mission that France intends to uphold as the primary nation of the continent. Yeah, traditionally Germany handles the economy, France handles politics and war, and they truly have the resources for it. Just a reminder, France is the sole country on the continent that possesses its own nuclear weapons, similar to the United Kingdom. But the United Kingdom is not part of the European Union, which means that such a country can assert itself as a permanent member of the Security Council, by the way, among other things, as an independent player. Surely Luchington does not like this, surely. They are jealous of this because Macron proposed the idea of creating European armed forces, criticized NATO, and is known for his phrase that NATO's brain is dead. Yeah, that was a rhetorical move, sarcasm, but nevertheless, it reflected the situation at the time when, during the first term of Trump, from 2016 to 2020, NATO was really going through a crisis. The most profound crisis that it has ever faced in terms of its goals, tasks, obligations, and so on and so forth. And for today, I believe Macron's initiative is also intended to accelerate the conclusion of the conflict in Ukraine. This is the third reason. How can you accelerate it? The war has been ongoing for a duration of 2 years already. However, I believe we must take certain unconventional measures, some innovative actions, such as assuming the role of the aggressor, in order to prompt Moscow to contemplate engaging in peaceful negotiations, which should be founded on diplomatic compromise rather than aggression and the self-importance of those individuals in the Kremlin. So, you have to show a symbolic gesture, If, for example, France were to send French legionnaires to the territory of Ukraine, let's say to Western Ukraine, it could be seen as a gesture, a military gesture, a gesture of retaliatory aggression towards Moscow, because Moscow would be put in a situation where it would have to decide whether to engage in conflict with European armies on Ukrainian territory. You can shell the deployment area where these European military forces, for example, French forces, could be located, but this is fraught with a response and further escalation. From this point of view, Moscow may back down. We are not sure about France's and its allies' determination. They may reconsider several times whether to deploy troops on Ukrainian territory or not, but such an initiative itself brings NATO closer to Ukraine and Ukraine closer to NATO. This, in turn, could have significant geopolitical implications and potentially alter the balance of power in the region. Now, this is really important to understand, that if the strategic goal is Ukraine's integration into the Western sphere, into the Western community, which implies integration, joining NATO, the European Union, and so on, then this is a very logical step. There are no legal obstacles to the introduction of troops into the territory of Ukraine from NATO or Kiev in general, as long as Kiev is not ready to host a third country on its territory. However, this is a matter of negotiations. I do not exclude the possibility that Macron's visit in mid-March will take place, and this issue will be discussed in Kiev. I mean that this specific question will be discussed. Will Kiev accept the invitation of French or other European military forces to its territory? This is still an open question, but it is also a signal to the United States that they have not yet decided on military involvement in the conflict in Ukraine. And France, you see, is already openly discussing this matter. That is a slap in the face, of course, for Washington. The indecisiveness and the Biden administration in this sense. And overall, according to the new president's plan, if he has a chance, Trump's criticism of his anti-European statements is a way to secure a spot in the Oval Office in the White House. Assuming the responsibility for the security of Europe, similar to that of a country, the primary country of the Western world, acting as a leader of freedom, then it is not very clear if you are all about isolationism, I mean Trump and his supporters, then to whom are you going to pass the buck in order to ensure international security? France, in this sense, desires as a player to assume a certain portion of responsibility for this in relation to European security, and in general, to assert some benefits that it can obtain for it. So let's observe how the situation develops. Definitely in Moscow, they treated it with seriousness. It is not possible to rule out that Moscow will respond, but it will respond in its own distinct way to Macron's initiative and his activity. I would not put it beyond them to take drastic measures. They might even encourage some terrorist attacks on French soil, or political assassinations that they have already carried out, by the way, in various countries, and thus demonstrate the vulnerability of European politicians and, above all, the leadership of France. Let's not forget that this is Emmanuel Macron's second and final term as the president of France. I would like to remind you that his main rival is a politician with close ties to Moscow, Marine Le Pen, the daughter of the well-known politician Le Pen, who was once the leader of the National Front of France. She's currently leading her own party and aiming for the Élysée Palace for the top position there. Macron, on the other hand, is said to be keen on leaving his successor. European newspapers, they say that it could be the current Prime Minister Italia, Gabriel.
I'll remind you of a very important point, which was also written about by the Western press, that in fact France, or rather Emmanuel Macron, they certainly couldn't help but inform America about their plans. And it seems like the White House as a whole supported it. Right now we see that, of course, the United States government is saying that there won't be any American troops on Ukrainian territory. We understand all the dangers and risks perfectly. On the other hand, let's play for literally 5 seconds. I'm like a pretend taker Carlson who asks, and why? Why should an American mother send her son, for example, somewhere to Europe or faraway Ukraine? Why should an American soldier defend democracy not at their place of residence, but in another location? Because, yes, we're starting with you from France. Next, we understand that they, as a rule, try there, if not unanimously, then largely supporting this decision. Many countries speak out. Certainly, everyone will still hope for the good old USA. And I can envision how Donald Trump or anyone else would interpret a statement about Americans' inability to fight anywhere and post it on their social media accounts. So you see, money like financial assistance is like something that could totally be a strong alternative, you know? Abstain from fighting for us, but render aid to help us fortify and enhance the strength of our armed forces.
Now listen up, when it comes to America and its isolationism. America, the first reason, was already late in 2 wars with involvement. In the world wars of the 20th century, it was late in getting involved in the war directly. During WW1, the Anglo-Saxons saved the day, and the war quickly ended in Germany. It was a reminder of how the conflict was resolved. The Second World War, America also dragged on for a long time and waited until Pearl Harbor was bombed by Germany and Japan's ally. And many problems related to war and colossal casualties and destruction could have been avoided if America had gotten into the war earlier. I comprehend that this reasoning is more prevalent in Europe rather than in America, because America has consistently endeavored to refrain from utilizing its own human resources beyond its continent. Understood. However, I would like to discuss another subject. That is the second reason. If the United States is the leader of the Western world, if America wants to gain advantages from this leadership, then they have to pay for it, whether we like it or not. You do not merely pay with money, you also pay with your status, which guarantees decision-making power in the ultimate sense. In the end, it is all about Washington, the capital city of the United States, when it comes to the fate of the Western world, and not just that. In order to maintain this status, you have to sacrifice something, including American soldiers. Another question is that the current situation is not such that it necessitates direct involvement of the American military. However, if we are not discussing the direct participation of the American military in the conflict in Ukraine, in the war in Ukraine, we should at least address the issue of providing aid to the Congresses in these 60 billion in Ukraine, which has been pending for at least 4 months. These funds are not just money, they represent the lives of American soldiers. If it is impossible to resolve this, then it implies that America is not capable of military involvement, deploying its troops, or even simply providing financial assistance. To avoid any unwanted entanglement in such circumstances, it is crucial to make the necessary payment if you do not desire to get involved in these military shenanigans or any other similar events occurring in Ukraine. Because let me tell you, while we are discussing demining, we are referring to these soldiers providing training to the Ukrainian military forces. Nobody is talking about a direct confrontation with Russian troops. But even this discussion is definitely not taking place in the United States in such a context. So America must not be late. This is truly important. Why? Because losing its geopolitical influence plays a significant and crucial role very easily. For America, this is a doctrinal position. America extracts a whole lot from what it can extract, precisely because of its very location. This is a commitment that the United States of America has taken upon itself. No one really forced her to do it. Due to historical circumstances of the 20th century, the consequences of World War II, her positions became significantly stronger during these 2 wars, especially the second one in the 20th century. And she, America, the United States of America, turned it into their own economic power, among other things. Thanks to this high position in the Western world, in its influence, in American influence on the affairs that are being resolved in Europe, well, and not only there. So in actuality, the burden of responsibility encompasses the accountability of rights, that is, the rights. They come with a substantial responsibility that America, as the primary country of the Western world, carries out diligently and with utmost dedication. By refusing to take responsibility, she also loses her rights. Here's the deal.
Currently, it seems that the United States of America, a country that undoubtedly has a significant impact on the entire world, is on the verge of redefining its position, role, and importance in the global arena. One expert, more familiar to us on our airwaves, said it would be very logical for the US president to be chosen worldwide, because this president and this country influence the whole world. Of course, it was said with good irony, not in a literal sense, but nevertheless. What do we have at the moment? Why am I expressing that you will need to ascertain your role? Who does America have a desire to be? Similar to the movie Barbie or the movie Oppenheimer. In my perspective, it's like a parallel. According to CNN, it became known that by the end of 22, the USA was carefully preparing to use nuclear weapons, and it's quite possible that Russia could have used it against Ukraine. Only America was getting ready to not respond with tit-for-tat sanctions, to not use nuclear weapons against Russia, but to come up with something else, to be in a better position, more lenient. We've heard a ton of variations with you.
Destruction of Black Sea Fleet strikes in rear of Russia. In general, anything goes.
For me, of course, this position is not about the Oppenheimer movie, which has now collected a bunch of awards at the Oscars. Oppenheimer still insisted that by attacking America, by attacking democracy, by starting a war, America is ready to back down. And maybe not in the best possible ways, but nevertheless, we recall that it had a substantial impact, including on the Second World War. Now, America prefers to fight for its rights, for women's rights, for the environment, to live in the middle of their country with their own problems. And for me, this is just like a Barbie movie, just when the whole world is still looking up to America as the ultimate powerhouse that can come in and handle any situation. Probably we're not here to oppose, as you Americans say, or to dictate what America should be. That's the country's right. But once they assumed such a responsibility and role, why fundamentally in nuclear blackmail did we observe that America took a few steps backward?
Now pay attention. American leadership, traditional Democrats, they are preoccupied with a wide range of global issues and pressing concerns. Unlike GOP, isolationist line always strong. But she's like roller coasters, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes more relevant, sometimes less relevant. However, nonetheless, always, when it comes to issues like global warming, disarmament, and fighting epidemics, the Democrats always play a more decisive role, taking responsibility for world problems and so on. They consistently assume a more influential position, shouldering the responsibility for global issues and so forth. Republicans are more lukewarm about this, well, the environment and other things. You know, Putin is really aware of this. Putin is comparable to a disturber of peace, comparable to an aggressor, as he exploits precisely these fears that exist within the fabric of American society. What are Americans afraid of? They're not afraid of the war that will eventually come to them because it's very far away. They're on an island. But they're afraid of global warming because it can mess up the climate somewhere around Ukraine where there's fighting going on. Americans are afraid that these problems will reach their continent. And Putin, understanding this, exploits it all. Well, for example, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Located in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is currently under occupation by Russian forces. To ensure its safety, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, sends permanent commissions to the plant. With 4 operational power units, the main objective is to prevent any damage or the release of a nuclear cloud resulting from the ongoing fighting. It is important to note that different experts have differing opinions on the matter, and as a non-expert in nuclear technology, I cannot provide a definitive assessment. However, the danger posed by this situation extends far beyond Ukraine and Russia, representing a global threat. The potential consequences could reach the European continent and even extend as far as America. Putin, aware of these risks, consistently attempts to influence American society by exploiting these fears and peddling this topic. For example, here he is giving an interview to Tucker Carlson. He's giving Tucker Carlson an interview and saying, you know, that the explosion of 2 oil pipelines, Nord Stream 2, caused damage because there was a CO2 emission. Well, Americans might not understand that. Comprehend that Putin doesn't care at all about carbon dioxide and emissions. Absolutely and totally. Why is he saying that? Exactly in the interview with Tucker Carlson. Because he knows that it matters to Americans. Americans are like, oh, our guy, he is attempting to ensure the protection of environmental safety and well-being. He's trying so that CO2 doesn't escape into the atmosphere, which means it won't ruin our lives. Do you understand? Therefore, when Americans express their concerns about certain global threats, it is undoubtedly and unequivocally the enemies of America, the enemies of American democracy, in the presence of Putin, of course, as he holds global influence, who will impact these fears. Do you comprehend? they will make the assertion that these fears are of human origin, not natural or supernatural in nature. So you can genuinely make a significant impact in addressing the global issues presented by the entirety of the COVID epidemic we have been through. The artificial origin of the virus that spread from the laboratory in Wuhan is a topic of much discussion among many people. It is legitimate to state that emissions into the atmosphere are also linked to the actions of participating countries like Russia and other nations. This connection underscores the global nature of the issue. Doesn't matter. And other questions, they are closely interconnected. Nuclear safety and nuclear threat issues, they are in the same context. You can achieve your goals, and Putin does it without even using nuclear weapons. You can only threaten with this application. The rhetoric that Putin is employing is already posing a significant threat to the well-being and stable existence of American society, and it cannot be underestimated. And they are succumbing to him without even witnessing the ramifications of this imminent danger. And what does that say about the fact that if the American society, well, first of all, in the face of the American leadership, doesn't clearly and unequivocally declare that it is not afraid of these threats, that it will not allow parasitism, abuse. In relation to the topic of global problems stemming from Putin and his Kremlin, along with his aggressive policy, it will actually serve as a deterrent, effectively preventing the possible development, specifically according to this scenario, of these threats. Purely a military factor related to the nuclear threat, it does not pose a high danger at the present time. Putin realizes that he can only pose a threat to a country with nuclear weapons if it does not have them, like Ukraine, for example. Then it will have an impact. However, he originates from the identical fears that currently exist within American society. If you detonate an atomic bomb within the borders of Ukraine, what will be the repercussions for Europe, France, the United States, and other relevant countries? Provide me with Ukraine, and then I will abstain from doing this. He is expressing it silently there. Putin is stating it directly, sending the signal to American society, but first and foremost, establishment. But we don't see a serious response to this blackmail. We do not see him. Perhaps we will see him later on. However, with Trump's arrival at the White House, in case he emerges victorious in the November elections, undoubtedly the focus will be on negotiations. Trump claims he'll sort everything with Putin in 24 HRS. I think it's an illusion. He won't make a deal with Putin. Due to the fact that Putin is an aggressive global leader, whereas Trump is a successful businessman and real estate developer, they originate from distinct paradigms. For Putin, it is a mission to achieve global dominance, whereas for Trump, it is a business endeavor that enables both parties to emerge as successful. But Putin doesn't want that. Putin wants it all. He doesn't want 20%, he doesn't want 30%, he doesn't want 50%, he wants 100%. That's how global politicians reason. And Trump talks like an isolationist, and that's going to lead to some pretty sad consequences, I reckon, and some unexpected consequences too. Because if we don't assess them now, it's going to be too late to deal with them later. And Trump and his team, in case they have the intention to win the elections, which is not a given, we will have to wait and see how the American voter will vote. They need to fully understand that they can fall into a trap, an incredible one in its scale, which they will lose both as businessmen and as politicians.
This is intriguing, we observe from surveys conducted among Americans regarding whether we should persist in assisting Ukraine. There's definitely American society on our side for the most part. It's getting more and more confusing how presidential candidate Donald Trump talks about ending the war. According to Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Ukraine won't get any financial aid or support, not like what he's hearing from Americans.
But in the end, I want to demonstrate a trap with nuclear weapons on a specific example, because Putin threatened everyone so much with the use of this nuclear weapon, including France. And now, when Macron says that we potentially lead troops someday and have nothing else to threaten with, because you previously did it with tanks, with artillery, with aviation, and this blackmail doesn't work with everyone anymore. And that's also good. It shows that we should fear this big, strong enemy, but nevertheless, it's not worth it because there are forces in the world that can resist him. So let's conclude it today, friends. As always, I remind you that it is extremely important for us that as many people as possible around the world who speak English freely and understand these topics see and hear our small conversation. The subjects we're discussing, why it's vital to defeat Ukraine, and of course annihilate our foe.
Remember to help us spread the word about our broadcast. Like, subscribe to the FEYGIN World YouTube channel. Feel free to share your comments, observations, questions, and topics with us. We will address them in our broadcasts without fail. Marco, thanks for the chat. Sure, see you in our next live broadcast.
Hey, y'all, have a good one.